whole new global talk show, Newstellers. Let's meet our panelists. So in Korea, June is the month of veterans. We have Memorial Day on the 6th, and the 25th is the commencement of the Korean War. And tomorrow, the 25th of June, marks 65 years since the war began. And to commemorate, we've got a special video to show you today, showing what life is like in North Korea. Kim Gyu-min's movie Winter Butterfly was released in 2011. After fleeing North Korea in 1999, Kim wanted to portray the harsh reality of life in the North on the big screen. And he intended to show the world the tragic reality of the lack of food in North Korea, depicting a truthful representation of what life is really like in North Korea.
This was supposedly a reflection of the director's early life in North Korea during the famine of the late 90s. Although I think the situation now in North Korea has changed. International aid groups have reported that North Korea is pretty close to being able to feed its own people, and that's a dramatic departure of how it was 15 years ago.
I think what this director is a defector, refugee himself, and he tries to convey, to show to the South Korean audience how difficult it is, like what kind of trauma it is to not have food. Something that maybe South Korean audience does not really understand.
Indeed.
And the movie gets a lot of media attention, but it was not such a big hit in South Korea either. So I don't think South Korean people are that much interested by this kind of stories.
I feel like we're becoming a bit desensitized to the whole issue.
Yeah, especially South Koreans, because you had the North for so many years, and you had this problem for so many years that people is a little bit kind of tired of it. So people don't really put a lot of attention in movies about North Korea. They don't buy that many books about North Korea. But still, that situation is existing. I agree with Jason that that movie is basically about the childhood of that director, of director Kim, and it's talking about the 90s in North Korea. They were really crazy. Starvation was everywhere, and still there is a bad situation in North Korea, and a lot of people is still hungry. But yeah, I mean, probably the situation is very different.
Sure.
Okay. So we'll be covering stories today that might seem almost too shocking to believe. And we mentioned earlier that change is being made, albeit slowly. And I think we at Newstellers can do our part by shedding more light on the situation. So our topic today is about the people in North Korea and those who have fled the country, crossing the border. So Korea is one of the very few divided countries in the world, so it leads to a lot of media attention internationally. So can we start off by sharing a few of the stories that you guys have written?
Sure. I mean, I've met dozens of defectors over the years here, but a couple really stand out for me. One was a man that I met in 2012 named Ji Sung-ho. As you can see, he's holding a protest against the North Korean regime, but he has a unique story. He's a double amputee. He lost most of his left arm and left leg in a train accident back in the north, but yet he was able to escape. He fled after the famine of the 90s. He crossed the Tumen River with the help of his brother, but then pretty much made his way to South Korea on his own. Another man, this gentleman here, is trying to be North Korea's first rapper. He was on a popular reality television show here in South Korea last year called Show Me the Money, in which aspiring rappers compete to get a record deal. He didn't get so far in the competition, unfortunately, but I really felt that his heart was in it. He was really trying hard.
What does he write about?
It was aimed at the South Korean audience, saying like, hey, look guys, we're not that different after all. Like we can live together, we even though we come from two different parts of the peninsula, we're still the same people.
Okay. Stephen, can we talk about yours as well?
Sure. One story that I did that I always remember and that I think resonated with a lot of people who read it was a story about marriage agencies that operate in South Korea, and their mandate is to match North Korean women with South Korean men.
Okay.
The women that I spoke to generally told me that what they wanted in a husband was they just wanted someone who was stable and who could kind of help guide them and like help them sort of integrate into South Korean society a little bit. They could have somebody that they could rely on. A lot of these women come here without their families. And I think that story, the reason that it resonated with people was that it's not a horror story. It's not something that seems like something that you would see in a movie. It's something that's very normal. You know, it's very, like, we've all had these experiences of longing for love and longing for companionship and longing to, you know, integrate and have someone to share our lives with.
It's not just about survival anymore, it's about finding your personal happiness as well.
Yeah.
Okay, up next we have Fred sharing his story.
The last story I wrote and for which I had to interview a lot of refugees was a story about the emergence of private markets in North Korea. North Korea is somehow becoming a very capitalist country in a way where people have to fend for themselves, they have to sell because the official salary you can get is you cannot even buy 1 kilogram of rice at the end of the month. Every time you interview refugees, it's difficult. You have to cross-check their story, and it's difficult. And that topic, the economic topic, and asking them questions of how is their daily life, how they make money on the market, how they can put bread on the table. Since you gather a lot of testimonies, you can cross-check their stories more easily.
Okay. And last but not least, let's hear what Atta has been writing about.
Yeah, well, I chose this story about journalists in North Korea. He was working for several years for the North Korean TV, and he explained how the North Korean TV works inside, how the regime performs the censorship, and inside the North Korean TV, how the 3 North Korean channels broadcast all their contents, how the propaganda system works, and I thought it was really, really interesting.
All right, so pretty serious stuff. So why do you think North Korea and its defectors is such a fascinating topic for international journalists?
Well, I think it's just the lack of information that we have about North Korea. Like, specifically, it's a lack of like any kind of understanding of what the lived experience of North Korean people are like. I mean, talking to North Korean refugees is really the only way of achieving the kind of like immediacy and intimacy that is really helpful in journalism. Like, to get an audience to like empathize with the North Korean experience, it's really an essential resource.
Okay.
I think there's a fascination for what is probably the worst dictatorship on the planet. We all have this representation from 1984, George Orwell. We have this image of what is to be maybe the most totalitarian state. So I think that's why, I mean, in France, every story is about North Korea gets so many clicks. There is really a huge appetite from the public for North Korean stories.
It's because of the system of North Korea itself. The government keeps everything in secret. They don't even release economic data. It probably is the only country in the world that don't release economic data. It's a country where everything is secret, they don't say anything, so people feel more curious about it.
North Korea is also such a part of popular culture, at least in the West now. We had the 2004 puppet movie Team America that depicted, you know, Kim Jong-il as this, you know, brutal tyrant who feeds UN representatives to sharks. Poor Hans Blix. And then, you know, we had The Interview out last year, which depicted Kim Jong-un. So, I mean, I think the fascination with North Korea just goes, it's gone beyond just academic. Now I think, you know, Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-il, in a way had become almost household names in at least the US.
And also I can talk about the particular case of Spain, and now much more people read the stories about North Korea, and it's since Kim Jong-un came to power. I can say that before, when Kim Jong-il was in power, if you ask any Spanish person who Kim Jong-il is, probably only 3% would know who he was. Nobody knew anything. People knew that North Korea was a dictatorship, it was a communist country, but they didn't even know who was the dictator, or they didn't even know any data about North Korea. But now, with Kim Jong-un, with this unique image that he has, that it can be funny, everybody in Spain knows North Korea, and a lot of people is interested in articles related to North Korea.
So we've talked at length about how international journalists are covering North Korea and its people. Let's get a little bit deeper into it. Why do you think so many people are choosing to leave North Korea? What's their end purpose?
Well, South Korea's Unification Ministry, the government body that handles relations with the North, as well as resettlement policy for North Korean escapees, released a survey that said the overwhelming majority of North Koreans escape for either the lack of food in the North or for financial reasons.
There's kind of an elite minority of North Koreans that they come to the South for political reasons. And I think those are the ones that the regime is more afraid of.
Okay.
Because they normally make organizations, they fight against the regime, they give speeches, conferences, they talk to the media, they reveal things about North Korea that can be more interesting than those other immigrants that they come just for food.
The more North Koreans I interview, the more I come away with the impression that the reasons that they leave their country of origin are not that much different than the reason that people leave their countries all over the world. I mean, we live in an age of huge migration. I mean, like, I think all of us here were
We
born...
are migrants.
Yeah, we're born
the
outside
five
of South Korea, and, you know, people are on the move all over the place, and I think in most cases, the reason people leave is kind of simple. It's just they looked at the situation that they were born into and they looked at a situation somewhere else and they thought that they had a better life chance if they were to move. And I think that's why a lot of North Koreans leave.
And many refugees actually are coming these days because they already have family in the South, and there is this family in the South. They bring back their daughters, their sons, their parents.
The resettlement money that refugees receive when they resettle here in South Korea, many use that to pay brokers to go into North Korea and retrieve their sons, daughters, husbands, other family members.
So while the majority of North Koreans fleeing are innocent, are refugees, a small minority have found to be spies, haven't they? So could you guys share any stories regarding espionage or...
Well, I did an article about this a couple of years ago, which was Ministry of Justice data showed that a certain portion of North Koreans who had been apprehended as spies in South Korea had gotten into the country by pretending to be refugees.
Okay.
There is this case, you know, North Korea and South Korea are in this very like mistrustful situation where they collect a lot of intelligence on each other and there's like an incentive to send spies to the other side. But I think we have to ask, like, number one, the number of spies that make it through I think is very, very tiny. And also, I mean, I don't really know, you know, what kind of intelligence are they gathering and like how sensitive is this information? Is
I
this...
think some North Korean agent can pose as a defector for a special operation. I remember in 2010, these two 36-year-old North Korean secret agent who tried to kill Hwang Jong-yup.
Hwang Jong-yup being
Hwang Jong-yup being
prominent
this
North Korean
high,
defector,
maybe the highest,
Probably the highest
defector.
Who's now passed away, but
He passed away naturally.
Naturally.
But the North Korean regime wanted to kill him, and they sent two agents posing as defectors trying to kill him.
But you also have a problem where some North Korean defectors have been framed. For instance, a couple years back, there was a pretty prominent defector here, Yoo Woo-sung. He was even working for the Seoul city government. However, his sister, who was defecting, revealed this information. It seems to be it was while she was being interrogated by South Korean authorities, and said that her brother was still working for the North Korean regime, sending back money. But a court later found him completely innocent. They had no evidence to support that he was a double agent.
I met him and I did a long interview with him, and it was tough to write about his story because it was just so complicated. And as Jason alluded to, I mean, like the circumstances under which he was implicated. I mean, it seems to me like his sister had, you know, described him as a spy under circumstances of very intense interrogation, and she might have been, you know, the South Korean intelligence agency agents might have, you know, kind of forced her to say this.
You sometimes in those anywhere in the world, people under that kind of interrogation say what they think the interrogator wants to hear. So we don't know.
There is also this story about, it was in 2010 that woman called Kim Min-hwa, that Chosun Ilbo depicted her as the Mata Hari of North Korea because she kind of seduced one guy for getting some intelligence. But actually, I agree with Stephen. The intelligence that they get there is not that really key intelligence. She actually got some maps of the Seoul subway facilities and stuff.
Wow. And I have them on my iPad.
I was under the impression it was more classified information, though.
I mean, in the case of that woman, she didn't get something like really can threaten the South Korean security. So people shouldn't be scared of sharing this kind of subway facilities or this kind of things in South Korea because some North Korean can put a bomb there, because it's not their way of acting. So I don't think it should be that concern.
Okay. Debatable, but for the moment, I think we're pretty safe. So a couple of spies then seem to be ruining the party for everyone else. Do you see a lot of mistrust within and of the defector community?
I think there's, unfortunately, in North Korea, because there's like always this threat that if you say the wrong thing, you could be rounded up and thrown in prison. A very interesting book that came out about a year ago was Without You There Is No Us by Sookie Kim. This woman, she was a writer, she posed as a teacher at a university in Pyongyang, and she taught the sort of sons of the North Korean elite. And one of the observations she came back with was that lying was just kind of a way of life for people there. It was just so normal for them to say things that weren't true for a variety of reasons.
I've in my research right now about the professional defector community and issues raised by Shin Dong-hyuk's fabrications of his narrative. People here have told me that it is not unusual for refugees to borrow the stories of their friends if they think that their story isn't dramatic enough, that they will repeat what they've heard from other defectors. But right, lying, as I was told by a researcher at Ewha Women's University, that being honest in North Korea is a great way to kill yourself.
I mean, in the case of Shin Dong-hyuk, he has scars to prove that he was tortured when he was young. So maybe the age is not what he said, maybe the place is not exactly where he said, but it doesn't mean we have to accept everything. As a journalist, we have to cross-check as much as we can, even though with North Korea it's extremely difficult.
How do you go about doing that? How do you check your sources and the information that they give you?
Well, you just call up the North Korean, the relevant government agency.
Hey, Kim Jong-un, I got this story about
sure.
Shin Dong-hyuk over here.
In really far countries like France or Spain, people just see it in the media and people believe it. And the Spanish media, they copy it from other media and they believe it. So I think there are some really irresponsible journalists that start those kind of stories, that they are totally unreliable and the sources are probably unreliable too. So I think that's a mispractice of journalism that talks worse of journalists than the sources themselves, right, or the North Korean defectors themselves. So I would really like that everybody could check the facts and use common sense before they write those kind of articles.
Indeed. So we've been talking about the lives of North Korean defectors who have come in search of better lives, but amazingly, some of them are actually choosing to return to their homeland or go on to seek asylum in other countries. Why do you think that is?
I did a story about a gentleman, Son Jong-hyun, a couple years back, who made this public campaign about asking the South Korean government to allow him to redefect to the North. He says it was because he missed his family in the North. He had quite a rehearsed story, I felt, about why he wanted to go back. But the fact of the matter was, he could never really adjust to life here. He was broke, he lost a lot of his money, and I think over the years, we have seen defectors go back. Aid groups I've spoken with say at least 100 defectors in the past few years have gone back. Perhaps it's more now.
I did a story, I guess about a year or two ago, about how Kim Jong-un had changed this tact, and what he'd started to do was he kind of almost encouraged North Koreans to come home and say to them, like, South Korea is a cruel society, you won't be accepted there, you won't have a good time there. Come back here, come back into the arms of the loving country that will take care of you. And a couple of them did go back.
So various reasons once again, but it makes me wonder whether they can ever find a place that they'll be truly happy with them. Okay, and there are also some unfortunate cases where defectors managed to get out of North Korea but were deported back. The teenager who claimed to have escaped North Korea has been locked in a legal battle since 2013 to secure refugee status in Sweden.
A key part of the South Korean intelligence agents' interrogation of new arrivals here is ensuring that they are in fact North Koreans and they are not ethnic Koreans from China. So I think the Swedish authorities' suspicion in this case is that this young man is an ethnic Korean from China.
Yeah, and also that some organizations care too, because some organizations were helping him to stay in Sweden and not to be deported.
Okay, so it would have been pretty devastating for the teenager to have to go back to North Korea where
If he's indeed
Well,
a
if he's a
North Korean.
right, I mean, because if he was deported to China but was actually a North Korean, then China would send him back to North Korea.
Indeed. But are there any other legal protections or international laws and conventions to protect North Korean defectors who do not want to be sent back?
I mean, there is a UN Convention on Refugees that I think it's international law. I think it covers. I think it's enough to protect North Korean refugees. If China would respect this convention, I think that would be much easier for hundreds of thousands of North Korean refugees
Sure.
in China.
The UNHCR, the UN's refugee agency, as well as the United States government and many other governments have criticized China for over a decade. Even though China is a signatory to refugee conventions, they still deport North Koreans back to the North. The problem is China does not recognize them as refugees. They see them as economic migrants. So they say, we don't have to enforce any refugee accords. They're not refugees.
And the other problem is that the international South Korea and the international community, they don't push China too much because it's an issue that only affects those weak people that are the community of defectors. There's no money of South Korea involved, no money of the United States, of the international community involved. So they just ask to China, please, don't send the defectors back. But they don't really push or they don't really try to make that issue big to force China to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So a thorny issue. So let's hope that discussions such as these can bring more attention to these issues and help North Korean defectors integrate better everywhere. Okay, so let's wrap up with your final headlines then, as usual. Would anyone like to start?
Okay, we'll go first. North Korean defectors, the long way to freedom and a better life.
Okay.
Crossing the border is not the end of the road for North Korean refugees.
Indeed, sometimes. Stephen?
For North Korean defectors, fleeing home is the start of a long road.
Similar sentiments. And Fred?
I don't know. I think my headline would be some kind of a call like North Korean refugees need your help. Let's help to integrate them better.
Okay. Wise words from everybody after a very heated debate. Thank you very, very much, gentlemen, for joining me. And Jason, I believe this is going to be the last time we see you for a little while.
No, I'm going away to do reporting in the Philippines for the next 10 weeks. I will miss you all very much, and I hope I have this job when I come back.
We will beat you, Jason. We'll try to keep the job for you.
Thanks.
We'll miss
We'll
you.
keep your seat warm.
We will miss you very much indeed. I hope you have a safe journey,
Thank you.
Jason. And I will see the rest of you next week. And join us next week, viewers, for a whole new global talk show, Newstellers. We will be open for any opinions or requests on our official website as well as our Facebook page.
2009년에 엄마랑 동생이랑 그 아는 지인분이랑 이렇게 두만강을 건넜어요. 북한에서 뭘 얘기하지 말라고 하더라고요. 맞으면 같이 맞아주고 이런 친구가 있었는데 그 친구들이 가끔 글을 지어겠어요.
북한의 기억, 지금도 일어나고 있는 일들 이런 것들을 작업하는 거고 몰래 이제 김일성 초상화를 이렇게 살짝 그 수업 시간에 그렸는데 선생님이 막 나오라 해가지고 막 엄청 두들겨 맞았거든요. 표현 자유롭게 할 수가 없어요.